Elena Carter had always believed that life was meant to be lived for others. Even as a young girl, she found herself drawn to helping anyone in need, neighbors, classmates, even stray animals. Her parents often said she had a heart too big for the world, a phrase she carried both proudly and cautiously, knowing that not everyone appreciated such selflessness. After graduating as a nurse, she threw herself into her work at St. Mary's Hospital in Chicago, often taking shifts that no one else wanted, visiting patients on weekends, and staying hours past her time to comfort those who felt forgotten. But despite her dedication, Elena's personal life was quiet, almost painfully ordinary. She didn't have a boyfriend, didn't crave the limelight, and was content with a few close friends and the occasional book at her favorite cafe. One autumn morning, as the wind tugged at the city streets and orange leaves swirled like tiny dancers, Elena received an urgent call from the hospital's transplant unit. A patient in critical condition needed a kidney donor, and no match had been found among family or friends. Elena's own blood type matched. Without hesitation, she agreed. Her mind was calm, almost instinctively certain. She didn't know the patient, didn't know his life, his story, or his wealth, yet she felt an overwhelming urge to help. The man she was to donate to was Adrian Whitmore, a CEO whose name often flashed across business magazines and financial news. To most, he was untouchable, a billionaire with a private jet, a sprawling penthouse in Manhattan, and a reputation for being reclusive, aloof, and almost untouchably busy. But Elena didn't know that. In her world, this was simply a life that needed saving, and she was willing to give a part of herself to ensure it continued. The day of the surgery arrived. Elena was nervous, though she hid it behind her usual composed demeanor. The operating room was cold, sterile, and humming with quiet urgency. As she lay on the table, she thought about the family she had seen in the waiting room, an elderly woman clutching a faded photograph, tears quietly streaming down her cheeks, and a young man who paced relentlessly, whispering reassurances to himself. Elena didn't know it then, but that family belonged to Adrian, whose health had deteriorated so quietly that even his closest associates were unaware of how fragile he had become. Hours passed in a haze of anesthetic, bright lights, and meticulous precision. When she awoke, her body ached, yet a warm sense of relief settled in her chest. She had done it, she had given someone a chance to live, and in that act, she felt an inexplicable peace, as if the world itself had paused to acknowledge her choice. Recovery was slow but steady. Elena spent a few days in the hospital, then returned to her small apartment in the city, carrying with her the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had made a difference. She thought little of the patient, assuming he would heal, resume his life, and perhaps never cross paths with her again. After all, their lives were on entirely different trajectories. But fate had other plans. A week after her discharge, Elena received an unexpected visit. A driver handed her a card and a small envelope with no explanation. Puzzled, she opened it to find a note from Adrian Whitmore himself. "I am alive because of your selflessness. I do not know how to thank you adequately, but I hope you will accept a small invitation, a lunch, nothing more, to meet the person who saved my life." Elena stared at the note, her heart racing. A lunch, with the patient. She had assumed gratitude would end at a polite card or a brief handshake. And yet here was an invitation from someone whose name she had heard countless times but never imagined. She would meet. Hesitating only for a moment, she replied affirmatively. The following afternoon, she arrived at a small, elegant cafe in downtown Chicago. She wore something simple, professional yet understated, her hair tied back, her expression calm but curious. As she entered, she spotted him immediately, Adrian, taller than she expected, dressed casually yet impeccably, his eyes a striking shade of gray that seemed to carry a lifetime of solitude. For a moment, the bustling cafe seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary connection they shared. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly, almost as if testing whether his voice would betray the depth of his emotions. "I don't even know where to start. You saved my life. Literally." Elena shrugged, smiling softly. "It was the right thing to do. I just knew I could help." But as they spoke, Elena began to notice the subtle cracks beneath Adrian's composed exterior, the loneliness in his eyes, the careful distance he maintained from the world, the rare vulnerability he revealed only in fleeting moments. She realized that while she had saved his physical life, there was a part of him that had longed for something else: human connection, trust, and perhaps, someone who could see him as more than a CEO or a figurehead. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more frequently. Adrian insisted on accompanying her to hospital events, invited her to charity galas, and began sharing glimpses of his life, his childhood, the pressures of building an empire, and the emptiness he had felt despite his immense wealth. Elena listened, not with judgment or awe, but with empathy, offering insights grounded in kindness rather than curiosity. One evening, as they walked along the riverwalk under a canopy of autumn stars, Adrian stopped and turned to her. "You have no idea what you've given me," he said softly. "Not just your kidney, but hope, trust, the belief that maybe, just maybe, someone sees me for who I am, not what I own." Elena felt her chest tighten, a rush of emotion she had rarely experienced in such intensity. "Sometimes," she whispered, "helping someone else changes you as much as it changes them." The months that followed brought unforeseen challenges. Adrian's health required ongoing care, but instead of feeling burdened, Elena embraced it as part of the journey they were on together. The bond they formed transcended simple gratitude, it became partnership, friendship, and ultimately, love. For Adrian, Elena's presence brought warmth to a life that had been meticulously controlled and carefully managed. For Elena, Adrian revealed the depth of resilience, gratitude, and the beauty of shared vulnerability. Their love was not a whirlwind affair of clichés. It was quiet, steady, and rooted in understanding. Friends noticed the change. Adrian's laughter became more frequent, his demeanor softer, and his presence more accessible. Elena's world expanded in ways she had never imagined, from attending board meetings as a trusted confidant to helping design initiatives that gave back to communities she had only dreamt of impacting. One evening, at a charity event honoring transplant donors, Adrian took the stage. "I owe my life to an extraordinary woman," he began, scanning the crowd until his eyes met Elena's. "Not just because she gave me a kidney, but because she reminded me that humanity is worth believing in, that selflessness is not lost in this world, and that love can heal even the deepest scars." The audience erupted in applause, but all Elena felt was a quiet, profound sense of fulfillment. She realized that in giving a part of herself, she had gained far more: companionship, love, and the knowledge that one small act of courage could ripple across lives in ways unimaginable. In the months and years that followed, they continued to grow, not just as a couple but as individuals committed to making the world a better place. Adrian established a foundation in Elena's name, dedicated to supporting organ donors and patients in need, ensuring that her selflessness would inspire countless others. Elena continued her nursing career, now with the confidence and security of a partner who respected and cherished her, but also with the awareness that her compassion had transformed more than one life. One quiet evening, as they sat together overlooking the Chicago skyline, Adrian reached for Elena's hand. "I often wondered if life could surprise me," he said. "I never expected a stranger to give me a second chance, and I certainly never expected to find this." He gestured between them. "Love, partnership, a future I dared not imagine." Elena smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes the smallest act can change everything," she whispered. "And sometimes, the person you help the most, is the one you didn't even know you needed." In that moment, with the city lights twinkling around them and the cool night breeze carrying a quiet promise, they both understood the profound truth of their journey. A single act of selflessness, a kidney given without expectation, had unlocked a life filled with hope, connection, and an enduring love neither could have foreseen. And as they sat in silence, hearts beating in unison, they knew that the world was, indeed, full of miracles waiting for those brave enough to give without seeking reward. Elena had given more than a kidney that day. She had given life, yes, but she had also given trust, courage, and the power of human connection. And in return, she had received a love that no wealth could buy, a reminder that sometimes, the world's most extraordinary gifts come not from fortune or fame, but from the heart. The story of Elena and Adrian became a quiet legend in their circles, not because it involved a billionaire or a dramatic rescue, but because it spoke to the universal truth that selflessness transforms lives, and that love, in its purest form, often arrives when least expected, carried on the wings of a simple, courageous act. And so, the nurse who gave more than a kidney found herself at the heart of a story that proved one undeniable truth: when you give without expectation, life has a way of giving back more than you ever imagined.